Hey, welcome to a special edition. Cigar Wednesday, Whiskey Wednesday, Wednesday in Tucson.
Tucson Wednesday.
We didn't quite make the Taco Tuesday in Tucson, but we made the cigar and whiskey in Tucson.
Mm-hmm.
And the finer acts of smoking a cigar without being a cigar snob.
It's an art.
It's an art.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you got to do it just right, because cigar is a lot of tobacco. And, if you ain't used to the nicotine in tobacco, oh, by the way, boys and girls, nicotine is an addictive substance.
Put the text at the bottom there.
That's right. But you know what? Every once in a while, vices, as long as they aren't addicting, you aren't addicted to your vices.
Recognizing what they are and what they aren't.
Yeah.
That's the way I think about it, like coffee.
Yeah.
Hey, if you're drinking coffee for the caffeine, that's great. Drink it black. Only put all that sugar crap in there. Recognize what it's for.
Well, the caffeine is a lot like nicotine. They both end in "ine," and therefore, and whiskey can be addictive to you. I know that if I don't have caffeine in a day, I get a caffeine headache. But sitting here, beautiful Catalina mountains in the background, figuring out business. Business is one of those things. If you're doing what you love, having fun doing it, and getting paid for it, man, it don't get much better than that.
No, it doesn't.
I mean, do I still call it work? I think I do out of habit. But most people refer to work as things you have to do.
Mm-hmm.
I look at it as stuff I get to do. I go back to my purpose, and I've done a lot of things in my life that I had to do, that I saluted. That's too soon, boy. I saluted and said, "Yes, sir," 3 bags full, because I had to do it. Because, one, when I was in the Army, I'd go to jail if I didn't. There's a young Marine lieutenant colonel who's demonstrating all that for the entire world. He's in the brig right now. When you say, "No, I ain't gonna," or you belittle the leadership above you. In the Army, the Marines, the military, you signed a contract to support and defend and uphold the oath of the office and obey the law, the lawful orders of your superiors. And he failed to do that. And I don't want to get into that because it's a.
I got a tangent that you might like.
Yeah, go ahead.
What do you think that does to the incentive structure? We talk a lot about incentives, leadership, and we were talking about rugby earlier, like we often do. And I was talking about how, I don't want anyone out on my field who doesn't want to be on the field.
Mm-hmm.
That's their buy, is that they want to be there. And so I expect something certain of them because they show up and because they choose to show up. And I think when you force people to show up, you start to play with that incentive a little bit. And so I'm curious, from your time in the military, what do you how much of an impact does that have on people's work rate and those type of things? And then, because like you said, you quite literally have to do it, otherwise you go to jail, and kind of takes away the purpose aspect of it. And so, I mean, I'm sure there's, many great leaders who do a good job of communicating that, but it's a little bit of a hole in the system. So I'd love to hear what you think.
Well, first off, you volunteered. You signed your name on the dotted line at the recruiter's office to volunteer to say that oath. And without any undue duress or purposes of evasion or persuasion, I believe is how it goes. You fully admit that and you say it with your right hand raised. So were there times many times in my military career
Mhm.
that I disagreed. Yeah, I always love to tell it one. My boss was Kent Bolster, Major Kent Bolster. He was the battalion executive officer, and I was the acting battalion S3, and I was a captain.
Mhm.
So a major is above a captain. And we were doing, this was an exercise. It was purely training. So no lives were at stake in theory, other than training accidents. That's a whole nother world. But what happened was I was presenting him an operation, a
Mhm.
plan. And my recommendation was course of action A.
Right.
We'll just say. And he said, nope, disagree with you, Otis. Course of action C. And I said, well, sir, I disagree with you. And I gave him my reasons. Those of you who've never done that, one of my rules of thumb, I'll just sidebar on this life lesson is if you don't have 3 solid reasons for why you disagree, then you need to go back to the drawing board, probably just shut up and move out.
Yeah.
So I presented 3 solid reasons, what I believe were solid, viable reasons that course of action A was the best course of action. This, and this, sir.
Mhm.
And he said, no, I disagree. Course of action C. I said, sir, really should be course of action A. And I reiterated my 3 reasons.
Mhm.
Probably about that time came up with a 4th and a half. Pulled something out of the air, made
Right.
something up.
Huh.
And then he said, no. Course of action C. I said, sir, look at this. Look at this, sir. It's plain and simple right here, right here. I said, no. I said, sir. And he said, shut the fuck up. We're going to do C. Then I said, roger that, sir. And the great thing about Kent, he's still a friend to this day. This was 20 some odd years ago, 22, 23 years ago. The great thing about Kent was he wasn't one of those guys that took that as disrespect because he was confident in who he was
Mhm.
and his leadership. That's the sign of a great leader. When somebody can disagree with you to the point that I had,
Mhm.
that he had to tell me to shut up, just sit down and shut up is what he had to tell me.
Mhm.
And I respected him enough to say, roger that, and follow through, even though I completely disagreed with it. I mean, it all worked out in the end. Like I said, it was training exercise. But the fact that he is a leader, he taught me a great leadership lesson, is somebody that you respect on your team, a subordinate on your team, no matter whether they're in a subordinate in a leadership position or whatever.
Mhm.
If you can hear a differentiating point to the point where I was ready, I mean, I was like, no, this is it. I was emphatic about it. I believed 100%. I was right. And then if you're the leader and you hear that and you respect that individual and their opinion and their experiences and their understanding, and then you still did with what you thought was right as the leader, that's a pretty powerful thing to do as a team. Because you know what? I already respected him because, you know, we'd had some small mix-ups before, but that was his leadership style also. He is, I'm sure he still has some of this aspects left. He was one of those leaders where he would push you. He'd put his hand in your chest figuratively and push you. And if you back down,
Mhm.
he would just keep on pushing and push you down until you were no longer of anything.
Hmm.
He was that kind of a leader. Some people struggle with that.
Yeah.
Some people just couldn't handle that. But if you are confident in who you are as an individual and your decisions and your values, and you want to uphold them, and your beliefs, and you want to stand up for that,
Mhm.
that kind of a leader is the kind of leader that you want to work for, because he's going to push you to the point. All right, tell me why.
Mhm.
Tell me why you believe that, McGregor. Tell me why you're so emphatic about it.
Mhm.
Okay, I hear what you're saying, McGregor. I agree. I hear you. But we're still going to do it this way.
Mhm.
That's true leadership. And I, I've known him for a long time, and he went on to some other jobs, and I knew some guys that worked for him, and they couldn't handle that. I laughed at him.
It makes me think of back in school, college and high school. You always have those, always have the teacher that's also the football coach, the teacher that also coached basketball, whatever it was.
I thought he was just the cafeteria monitor. That's what my football coach did. He didn't teach nothing but PE, football, and cafeteria.
well, I had one specifically that was a management class, and this guy was a coach. This guy was, I think he coached basketball for a long time, if I remember right. But he had very much a coach personality, hard ass, like, this is what's happening, this is what you got to do, this is what I expect of you. And I think it's so funny because, like you're saying, some people respond to that. I remember being in those classes and people like, gosh, this guy sucks, he's such a dick. I'm just like, you're just a coach. You never had someone be hard on you like that, push back on your ideas. And the thing about that, and you touched on this, is when somebody pushes back on your ideas, there's two different ways they can go about it. Is they can just push back blankly, or what a good leader does, what you were talking about, is the why.
Mhm.
Why do you think that? What is the logic going into that situation? And when you're confident in yourself and your own logic you're applying to it, it's a lot easier to do that as a leader. Because when you, I got an example for it. The coaching rugby with U of A 2 years ago, I had a player, freshman, who is an Aussie. And so, he probably presumed he might know a little bit more rugby than I did. And he was pushing back on this thing. He just kept pushing, wasn't listening to me. And I pulled him to the side afterward, did grab him by the jersey a little bit and said, hey, why?
Learn that part from me.
I said, why do you want to do that? It was a play in a line. I said, why do you want to line up there? What do you think that is? He said, well, coach, we can lift him up higher. I said, okay, so you're lining up a foot and a half further back to lift higher. I said, I'm not, I ain't no geometrist, but arc of the ball, if you're a little bit forward, you don't have to be as high. I laid it out for him. And he looked at me and said, okay, yes, sir. Never made that mistake again.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there's also the outcome, because it takes vulnerability as a leader there, because he just as easily, he could have schooled me. It's just as likely that he could have schooled me with some other knowledge I hadn't thought about. And I think that's one of the main lessons there when you talk about, being a leader in that situation and how you talk to your subordinates and your players in that situation. And it's accepting that they know not necessarily more, but they know different, is the way I would put it.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you coach rugby, when you're a leader in a business, you don't get to do everything anymore. And when you dictate from the top how to do everything, you can miss a lot. Where you think this is the best idea, but you haven't done it in forever. And take me out coaching. I haven't played rugby since my sophomore year of college. Mm-hmm. I'm out there. I haven't ran around. So I genuinely, when I pull people, and just like that kid, I genuinely ask them, why are you doing that? What did you see? Mm-hmm. Because there is always the chance that I'm completely wrong. And I think you have to come in with that. And I think you're talking about Kent. I think he did that. He was accepting the idea that he would be wrong by allowing you to come back with your rebuttal there. Now, he still made the decision that he was right and wanted to move forward with it. Mm-hmm. But it's accepting that you could be wrong and having that level of vulnerability. Thankfully, I haven't coached with too many guys like this. I know you have, and we're not going to drop any names. And I know some other ones that I know that are great people, but they just don't have that confidence to where it's like once a kid comes in that knows as much as you, or maybe a little bit less, they shut down and tell the kid to shut up. Oh my gosh. Such a weird thing to think when you have a grown man telling a high schooler or a college kid to shut up and go do the thing because they're too worried about them applying logic back to your situation. Last thing I wanted to add on that before I send it back over to you is, and actually in that same management class that I referenced in that coach, one of the studies that we talked about in that class a bunch is studying C-suite executives around the world and their behavior. And there's really interesting thing, the American style of leadership. We are ranked #1 at asking for advice from our subordinates. We are also ranked, I don't remember what it was, I don't remember how many countries there were, but we were bottom in taking the advice.
Yep.
And I think it's because people are scared to be vulnerable. They know that it's the right idea, that in their gut, they know that they need to ask people. They know they need to get other facts. They need to get other opinions, but then they don't have that confidence in themselves to be vulnerable in the situation.
Well, you just reminded me of Jeff Yevsky. Very recent episode of the show. One of the things that he said that I thought was a really great knowledge nugget was, we were talking about innovation. He said, ask your team. I mean, how simple is that? Who knows better than the guys who are doing it? You know, if you are that leader, I use the term leader loosely here. If you are that leader who believes you know everything, man, you've got a tough road to hoe, because man, I mean, I just leave it at that, because if you think you know everything,
You're done growing.
you're done growing, right? Yeah, I can't remember that Stoic quote right off the top of my head, but I mean, that
A
is,
man cannot learn that which he thinks he already knows.
yes, there you go. There you
Apple's
go.
not too far from the tree over here, or
Yeah.
prickly pear ain't far from the
Prickly
cactus.
pear. There it is, right over there. But you know, it's, as a leader, you know, there's a couple of things that I think are fundamental for leadership. Trust is one of them. You know, I talk about the trust triad all the time. Trust yourself, trust your team to perform, and your team trusts you, right? That's your trust triad. So trust is #1 in leadership. Number 2 is growth. You got to be willing to grow, and you got to be willing to be told you're wrong. And then finally, and this one's ranks right up there with trust, is hope. Because as a leader, you have to believe in hope. Hope's not the plan. Don't get me wrong there, but you have to believe, you have to be eternally optimistic.
Right.
And that's where hope comes in. Hope, yeah, again, hope is not the plan, but eternal optimism. A leader has to be optimistic that you will succeed at whatever it is you're doing.
And you know, the lesson, I think, I love it, eternal optimism. That's a great way of putting it. You know, I think about you know, whether it's a business where you're looking to, you know, whatever your business's goals are, hit a certain number of sales, you know, hit this benchmark of revenue, sell as many of our widgets, whatever it is. You set those benchmarks for yourself. If you don't have confidence in hitting that, if you don't have the hope that gets there, your team won't have it. You know, use the rugby example again. You get into the preseason, we're winning a national championship. I don't care which freaking team you're playing for. In the preseason, you better be playing for a national championship. Because if you don't, then you already lost. If that's not your goal, then you've already lost. You have to set those aggressive goals. Now, does that mean that when you get blown out in your first game of the regular season, that you are going to sit there to those boys and tell them, hey, we can still win this national championship? No, you don't got to lie to them. But it's still a hope of getting better. You know, we talked about this earlier when we were having our discussion out here about the ability to convey to your team that we're not working towards the goals they think they are. You know, it's not about wins. It's not about scores. It's about pursuing perfection. And it's that same type of thing in the business where it's you want to set these almost like unimaginable goals and then continue to work towards them so that you can find success along the way. Because if you don't set it on those big goals, you're never going to really get anywhere. You're not going to have any explosive change. You're not going to change the market. You're not going to change the world. You're not going to do any of that if you don't set a goal like that.
Well, that reminds me of one of my favorite business books that I read a handful of years ago, Measure What Matters. And everybody talks about KPIs, key performance indicators, right? KPIs are great. And that's basic. That's the way I'll put it. I'll just call it out as it is. KPIs are just foundational, basic business stuff, right? OKRs are the next level shit. I mean, they really believe they are. And that's what the book, I can't think of the author's name off the top of my head, Of course, I don't have my bookcase sitting behind me for me to cheat and look at. But measure what matters. What he talks about is OKRs, which are objectives and key results. And the key element of these are two pieces. There's not a key element. There's a couple of pieces to it. Number one is your objective has to be something that you have to work extra hard to achieve. If you can do 10 and you're confident you can do 10 in the quarter or the month, however you're setting it up, then you need your objective should be 15. Mm-hmm. It's like our buddy Angus talks about stretch goals.
Yeah.
Right.
I was about to ask
stretch goals.
What happens to a business when you don't have stretch goals?
That's on you. And that's what these OKRs are. But the other element that I think that is truly powerful and what he talks about in his book is everybody has them. And everybody presents their status on a recurring basis from the CEO. And this concept was adopted into Google about 15, maybe even 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. And from the CEO down to what am I trying to accomplish? And oh, by the way, this objective, I'm the CEO. I said I would get 10 and I'm only at 7. And man, this has been a struggling month. And it's not to make excuses, but it's to hold everybody accountable. Yeah. Up and down the chain, down to the very bottom junior salesman who is doing nothing but getting the list together for the salesman to call, who is doing, and all those sort of things. It is that kind of power that exists in these OKRs. And the other thing that's really cool about them, because KPIs flow down, mm-hmm. right? So KPIs nest. If you're not familiar, what I mean is, so the way KPIs start is here's our vision for the next 5 years. Here's our goal, our company goals for this quarter, mm-hmm. and I flow those down to the lowest level guy, and he's got he needs to make 35 calls.
Why am I picturing an aquaponics system for this metaphor?
Well, it does kind of flow down. I mean, it does, because it starts at the top and it flows down. Mm-hmm. But what's great about OKRs is they're developed in parallel. Mm. So, and probably parallel is probably the wrong geometric term, because that would denote they never come together, because they still come together to achieve the common goal, the common outcome.
I think parallel is right. We're saying mm-hmm. the stretch goal is to go west till we hit California. We can go parallel that way. We're still working together.
Yeah. Well, the one I thought was interesting.
Sorry, I was just gonna say, because I think it's parallel efforts is mm-hmm. the idea. You're working towards the same direction, but the things you're doing aren't necessarily together. You're not necessarily bouncing back and forth. It's you doing your job moving forward. And if we all do our job moving forward, then the whole team goes forward.
Well, I think the Super Bowl is one of the best examples he uses in the book.
How about them Cowboys?
We
only got a couple more weeks of that.
Yeah, I'm holding out. Come on back, stay healthy, buddy. But it is, when you think about it, the entire organization, mm-hmm. Jerry Jones and the Jones family run that entire organization, right? And you got the coach, the team, they have their OKRs. You got the staff, you got the stadium, you got all these other things that are all working. They all have to work together to achieve the Super Bowl. Yeah. Right. They all, I mean, it's a team. It truly is. It's not just the 11 guys on the field. I was going to say 15 guys on the pitch, but in this case, we're talking football. 11 guys on the field that achieve that. It's the entire organization, and each element of that organization has an OKR. Mm-hmm. The ticket sales, the broadcast, the Cowboys cheerleaders. They I was going to use
the example of the hot dogs, because I hear Jerry Jones Dreamland has one of the best hot dogs in the freaking country.
Well, Jerry has somebody go to get him an egg McMuffin every morning for breakfast. I mean, I don't.
Which he puts salt on.
That guy, I tell you what. Don't tell his wife though. That's what he says. Yeah, while he's on TV.
Well, I think you know, what you're talking about as far as setting those goals, and it's like understanding where you are inside the organization.
Mm.
So I got a story, and you might remember this one because you were coaching then. It was John Patterson with Josh Rice. Remember Josh?
I remember Josh.
Oh yeah, great guy, great guy.
Yes.
But I remember we reached the playoffs that year, and Josh came up, and Josh was one of those guys, as one of the people you would always want on the team. Not necessarily on the pitch, not necessarily, but he's got to be around. You have to have him around because he was so great for that team. And I remember he asked John, he's like, "Hey, so now that we're going to playoffs, do you want us to stop coming to practice?" And I've never seen, and this is saying something, I don't think I've ever seen John so pissed. Like, he felt so attacked by that idea because John saw the big picture.
Mhm.
He knew that in order for us to win a state championship, Josh Rice, who is our second or third string scrum half, has to go and beat up on the guy above him over and over and over again so that he could get better and all those type of things. It's about recognizing your job inside that situation. You know, it's the same type of thing. I've talked about this with a bunch of my U of A players this year, guys who are sophomores.
Mm.
It's like, hey, you're a leader now. Your job description changed. You also have to build those guys up. You can't just say, hey, dumbass, you should have hit that ruck. You have to teach them why. And you have to hit that next level of understanding, because that's how we get it from the top level with myself and the other coaches all the way down to the bottom level where every single person is understanding it. Now, to your point, that looks different.
Yeah.
Right. If I'm the backup of my position, my job is to make my opposite's job as hard as freaking possible so that he gets better. Hey, and here's the big surprise I feel like a lot of people don't get. And this is true for a business and for the rugby example, as most things I say are. If you work your ass off to try to beat the guy in front of you, you're not only making him better, you're making yourself better, and the coaches notice it.
Yeah.
And that's such an important understanding there of, yeah, you got your stretch goal of making that starting spot. You know, you might never reach that, but you also got the goal right here of going in and making his job harder and getting him to work harder. And I think that's what it really comes down to, is having that grander vision for your team, grander vision for your business, and then communicating that vision in a way that people can see themselves as a part of it.
Well, it reminds me of a story, and I can't remember the hospital name, the name of this hospital, but it's such a fundamental thing of everybody in your team, sports team, business team, being bought in.
Mm-hmm. Everybody in this hospital saving lives.
Yes, and this was the janitor, the guy who is mopping the floors at night, cleaning up the floors. And he understood his purpose. And his purpose was to clean the floors and disinfect the room to keep a clean environment so that their customers, their clients, their patrons, the people in the hospital had a better opportunity to get better because there was not germs. It was not dirty. So not only was it, it was germ free, but it also was clean. So they felt better about themselves as they were trying to heal.
Yeah.
He understood that. He understood that what his actions did helped enable the entire team to accomplish and fulfill their mission.
Mhm.
That's, man, when you have that kind of understanding all the way down, think about that, to that hourly wage. You're in a multi-million-dollar hospital, hundreds of employees, doctors that are making $250,000, $300,000 a year, all this sort of stuff, nurses that are busting their butt. I mean, just all this sort of stuff. And you got the guy who's got a mop bucket and a mop, and he understands his purpose in the bigger picture and how he provides value added, which, oh, by the way, meets one of the human needs, Maslow's human needs, of feeling like you're a contributor. That's a powerful place to be. And that should be an objective and a goal for everybody in your team.
Yeah.
Like our tribe and purpose team, we all know, or better, I hope, I'm saying that optimistically as a leader, that we all know, everybody knows that what they do is a significant contribution to the overall success of creating a legacy of leaders.
So I'm curious then,
Mm.
what do you do? And sorry for saying I'm curious. Because apparently I've been saying that too much.
I'm surprised Miss Jessica didn't call you out on that sooner. I'm just telling you.
Oh yeah.
Because Mom called you out. Miss Suzanne called you out a long time ago.
I think that might show that Miss Suzanne listens a little more than Miss Jessica.
You hear that, Miss Jessica?
She won't hear it. But you know, how do you teach that? Or is that kind of almost like one of those personality traits, like a self-selection thing? Some people get it, some people don't. Because, you know, I keep thinking about it, you know, in the sports analogies of it. Some people are okay getting the assist. Some people are okay doing the dirty work. You know, some people get that. Other people don't. And I guess my kind of question to you is, when people don't get that idea, when it's, you know, throw out here, we'll use another sport, hockey. When it's, I have to be the one scoring the goals, otherwise it's not successful. How do you change that mentality in your team?
You get different people on your team. Bottom line, you hire for fit and you train for skill. I was just having this conversation with a client this morning.
Oh, I'm sorry, I was just gonna say, just like we were talking about, you know, I used the rugby example earlier of, if you don't want to be here, I don't want you there.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of what you're saying is that is the first thing. You know, you got to check these 3 boxes to join the team. One of those boxes is okay doing the dirty work.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, it starts with values. And I'm going to go back to, you know, something I teach. I coach with my fellows, my active duty guys that are about to separate from the military. Refer to them as fellows, that their values, their personal core values, need to align with the business values that they're going to work for. The same thing needs to happen if you're hiring somebody. Is that person a fit for my organization? And that's one of the hardest things to figure out, because you can look at the resume and see, yeah, they've got these skills, and those are the skills we need. But is that person a fit? It reminds me of this Bo Schembechler. Schembechler. Yeah, I think it's Schembechler. I feel like I'm screwing up his last name. Bo was a coach at the University of Michigan. When University of Michigan was Big Blue and they just destroyed everybody. They were the Big Ten national championships all this year. And Bo was asked in his press conference why he didn't recruit this young man from Michigan into his team.
I didn't know Bo, but I know this quote.
You know
I know the quote.
You know this quote. And what he said was, if he was on this team, he would beat us every day. And the fact that he went to Ohio State, their #1 rivalry, he only gets to beat us once a year. And you think about that into your team and your business, and what that really means in your business. That is hiring for fit, hiring for culture. Because the worst thing that you can do, I don't care whether you're a 1,000-person company or a 10-person company. If you hire the wrong person, they're not going to be happy, and you're not going to be happy, and you're going to suffer with it, and you're going to struggle with it, and you're going to scratch your head every day. And you're going to get to this point. In fact, I was having this exact conversation with a fellow this morning. You're going to get to this point of, why do I not want to talk to this guy? I don't want to have a meeting with him there. And you're going to start to do things that are going to be a hindrance to your success in your business. Like, now we're not going to have a meeting because, God help us if Joe's there. Oh, geez.
We're not going to get anything done.
Oh, yeah, geez, all Joe's going to do is this and this. And then you develop this thing and you quit making progress because you got the wrong fit in your team. Now, Joe may be a great guy. I've had plenty of guys that work for me over the years that would be great next door neighbors. I
love the way you just put that.
I still, to this day, I have one. I mean, I have the fondest memories of this guy, and he'd be a great next door neighbor for you and anybody else. You know, he's got all the tools, all the gadgets, and is always willing to come over and help. But as far as getting the job done, no. And that's okay. You know, he had other things and at that point, that was in the Army, so I didn't have much of a choice. We made the best of it.
Mhm.
But don't hire a great next door neighbor. Now, you can hire somebody that's going to do a great job, and they can be a great next door neighbor, but don't hire somebody that's just half of that picture.
Well, I think the interesting thing there is it's so natural when you go through the hiring process you want a good team. You want people to be happy. You want energy. You want all these type of things. Those are all perfectly natural. They're good things to want. But when you start selecting for them exclusively, you create that blind spot to where it's not just about whether they're a great guy, great gal, whatever it is. It needs to also be, what is their purpose and how does that align with our company purpose? Because too often you see somebody, you go through the hiring process and you think, gosh, this is just a great person to have in the room. Using Josh Rice as the example.
Mm-hmm.
Great person to have in the room, brings that energy, boosts everybody up. But then you have to ask, how do they view themselves in the company image? What is their purpose for this? Josh Rice, as that example, is somebody whose purpose was still part of the team. It wasn't secondary.
Mm-hmm.
There's an opposite kind of an example, and I can't think of a specific name, which is probably a good thing. But you could also have a person in your team, a player on your team, who is great for the team culture in the sense of energy, jokes, happiness, yada, yada, yada. But they're not actually contributing to the purpose. There's a slight difference there. Because you can have something that's really good for the culture, not necessarily being that poison, that drag on your team, but they also aren't actually contributing near as much as you think. And I think that's an important thing. And it's about, and I feel like we say this all the time, about honestly looking at it and saying, okay, what are they actually bringing? And what does that actually do for us? Rather than just assuming that having a good person on your team is a good thing. Because I think I got this from Uncle Ben. A good person will steal a lot of money from you. Actually, no, that's a Mr. Faraji quote.
Yeah, that sounds much more like Mr. Faraji than it does Uncle Ben. I can just tell you that.
Yeah. Well, but there's a lot of truth to it. Good person will steal a lot of money from you. And it's not necessarily going to be because they're consciously stealing it. It's going to be because they're hurting you and they're hurting your business. So you're not moving forward. Now, I hope they're not consciously stealing, at least.
Yeah. Geez, you really screwed up if you hired that person, and I feel sorry for you. But we all have. Right. We all have hired that person, unfortunately. But that's a really good point in the fact of it's Dave Ramsey said this. I don't know if he's the originator of it, but I'll just give him the credit. Just slow to hire, quick to fire. And Dave, I have personal experience with this because I have a very good friend. Well, I'll shout out to brother Scott.
Yes, sir.
Scott Kinder, DOL coach, because we're smoking a cigar. Scott, you appreciate that, and having a bourbon. You and a Tennessee boy, adopted Tennessee boy. I won't give him full credit, but love you, brother. And he's going through a process, and it is a process to get there. And going back to Dave and Scott with his business and how he's hiring people as well as referencing, but going back to Dave, if you hire somebody because, oh my God, I need help right now, then you're going to get, you're going to get what you pay for in a crisis. I used to work for a guy.
Let me just say, what paid for in term, this is the broad economic sense of paid for. You are not literally paying for that. You are paying for it in your time. Take the time. Don't waste your time, just like you wouldn't waste your money.
Well, if you're not planning ahead and being intentional in your hire, if you're reacting into hiring, you're going to fail. You're going to be lucky to be 50-50 on hiring the right person. I mean, honestly, I don't care how good your job description is. I don't care how good your interview. If you need somebody, holy crap, I need somebody right now. You're going to get what you pay for. Oh, what I was going to say is, I used to work for this guy as a consultant. We'd partner up and do stuff, and he loved it when people hired us like that, because you know what? When when a business would hire us in a crisis mode, they're like, oh my God, we need help. We need help right now. Guess what? We got paid a lot more. We got paid a lot more because they were in a crisis mode.
Mhm.
You know, it's scarcity. It's not, man, it's not like we were stealing from, it was scarcity in that they were in crisis mode and we had that special set of skills that would get them out of that crisis. And that was why we could charge for it.
When you're desperate, you'll give the blank check to solve the problem.
So the point I make, and I this is the foot stomper.
You can foot stomp.
Yeah, I can. The foot stomper here is you better be planning at least 90 days out before you need somebody in that position. 90 days is the minimum.
Mhm.
Think about that. That's a long time out if you're a businessman. You're doing some serious projecting. You are truly working on your business and understanding what is going on in your business and projecting out in your capital and the needs as your business grows so that you can start to identify that stuff today to hopefully start to work to find the right person 3 months, 4 months, 5 months down the line, as opposed to, holy crap, I need some help right now.
Yeah.
So,
I'm laughing. That lesson might have hit home a little bit.
yeah, well, and it's a growth thing. I mean, we all learn them.
I think there's a lot of people out there who can be told a thing a million times. They got to do it once.
Yeah, we all make that mistake hiring the wrong person, or taking the wrong job. I mean, flipping it the other way.
Oh yeah.
Right. And you got to learn from it so you don't do it again. That's the key element of it.
You know,
go ahead.
Oh,
I'm looking at my cigar and thinking it might be about.
Well, I got a personal one on that. Going back to, and I know we've talked about this a few times, my times at Cobra Valley. My co-founder at Cobra Valley, his vision for what we were going to do was not very different from mine. What we wanted to build was the same. The difference is why we wanted to build it. And I didn't see that. I really didn't. This is something I think about all the time, about if I had just seen it. You know, there were plenty of things that he said that were odd to me. You know, we're talking sustainable agriculture, revitalizing rural communities, right? That's what I was talking about. He was talking about the end of the world and having food for the town when the world is, basically. And that was a solution, or that was a problem that I was solving. Like I didn't think about it because I was solving that problem. That was part of mine. But then eventually, you know, you reach that point where the purpose matters more. And that's where it fell apart.
Yeah. No, that's a great point, because it just reminds me, you know, there's a whole lot of paths to the top of the mountain. You know, and sometimes it takes a lot longer to get up there than it does other ways. But you got to understand why you want to get to the top of the mountain. What is it? You know, why? You know, is it a sense of accomplishment? Is it to serve something? Is it to do whatever? But the paths can be different as long as you know and have a vision for and maintain that vision. This kind of is in a broader sense of that, and have that why that works together in your team. That's really the, you know, you had the outcome of providing food sources to, you know, a village. We'll just call it a village.
I think Miami would count as a village.
Yeah, well, I don't know if it's even that big. But, love you out there, Miami, Arizona. Folks.
Miami, if you want to say
Miami, I'm gonna say it like a local. Miami, Arizona. Spelled like Miami, if those of you want to look it up on Google.
Hey, beautiful little town to go through.
It is.
They're a great barbecue restaurant. Go see Joe. Joe will hook you up.
Tell Joe that Camden sent you.
Yes, sir.
You know, but in the end, the why that you were going to the top is different. And I think that's the problem.
Mhm.
You know, that was the divisive thing that happened. So,
And it's because the why starts to influence the decision making.
mhm.
You know, when I think back to the literal decision that he made that drove me and the rest, and really the rest of the team, shout out to David Wagner, one of my best friends. He drove us all away from it because he made a decision based off of his why.
Mhm.
And frankly, to use the literal example of what he talked about, like that end of the world stuff, he's a very religious guy and all this. Nothing wrong with being religious, nothing wrong with necessarily thinking the world's in. When you make a decision off of that,
For the entire organization,
golly,
that the organization is not aligned with those values, going back to that lesson.
it's gonna fall apart.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because if I believed what he believed, I wouldn't have left.
Yeah.
But because of what I believed and because of what David believed at the time, and we realized that
At the time.
he still believes it.
Oh, okay.
We still talk at least once a month about going and doing that same thing, except doing it better. but that's what I mean, is because we still see our vision. I'm still so excited about that vision.
Mm.
And I still talk about it. I mean, shoot, I'm sure people who listen to the show, they could hear the change in my voice when I start talking act.
Mhm.
Like it's still a passion of mine. It's still it's still part of
He
my
gets
why.
excited about prickly pears in the background. That's how much ag he has in his blood.
Yeah. But when you fall, and this is the lesson there. So when you're misaligned on your purpose with your team, your why of the business is going to fall apart and the individual why will take hold.
Mhm.
When you have a team whose individual whys, their individual purposes align with the grander scheme, nothing could happen that would shake that business. It's like I'm not going to act like I have a specific example of this. Maybe you will, but a business that goes really through it. Like they went through some shit. COVID-19 times 10. They really went through it, but everybody was on the same page. Everybody had the same purpose. Everybody had the same why, or at least they were fit into the structure of the business. They kept going. They didn't stop.
And I do have examples of that. I mean, the military is an easy one, but I have clients, and shout out to one of my clients, Atlas Advisors. They have done that, and they've done. Not only did they shift through and adopt during the Rona pandemic, and adopt into that environmental change, they have adopted into multiple environmental changes. One of their main revenue sources was Afghanistan. Guess what? That shut down. But you know what they did? They shifted.
Mm-hmm.
They shifted, and they are back to probably very close to what they were at second quarter, when they thought the bottom was falling out. President Biden pulling everything out. No Americans. The sky is falling, and because they managed, and that team believed in the vision and believed in each other to succeed, they're recovering from it. So a shout out to Atlas Advisors and what they've done and how they've been able to adopt and adapt to a new environment. And I think it's about time because my cigars are getting a little short. What'd you learn? We were all over the map. This would be we talk about Joe Rogan all the time. Joe Rogan podcast. This would be a Tim Ferriss random show. Mm-hmm. I would correlate this to Tim Ferriss and his wine drinking with a friend. In that we covered a lot of subjects, and one of the ones that for me, I think as I go through life as a parent is, really, you had that as a class in high school? Camden had a management class in high school?
It was a college class.
Okay. All right. Well, still, even that, and he was the former basketball coach.
Mm-hmm.
That's that's pretty cool. You got some good lessons out of that class. You know, I was calling out some academic leadership folks with a buddy of mine earlier today, our buddy Zach, and making fun of people who teach it and never done it.
Yeah.
But sounds like he done it too. So that's some good lessons you got from him.
Yeah, you know, I can think back to multiple times in that class, and this is the full caveat on this is management came easy to me, probably because of this guy, probably because he was teaching about leadership and all that stuff, you know, since I was very young. I'm sure, whether he was realizing it or not, but that class came easy to me. Those tests came easy. The things that stuck with me are the stories that he told and the lessons from those. One of the ones that sticks out, and I won't take this too far on a tangent, and I also have to say U of A has gotten significantly better at this, is, you know, we always love beating ASU. Whatever it is, we want to beat them. And
Even though they suck.
They do. And well, wait, do you mean we suck at football, or do you mean they suck in general? Because those things are both true.
Yeah. Ooh. Good point.
But they smoked us on online school. They were early to it. They were really early. ASU Online is like one of the biggest online programs in the freaking world.
Yeah, they blew you all the way on that. Boy, they got out in front.
And oh my gosh, the amount of leadership lessons that I heard from him being an advisor to our dean during that time, and him coming to our class after those meetings and talking to us. Oh my gosh, there's some leadership lessons in there. But, you know, well, one thing I learned as we're going through that is how much more you can get out of the real life experience and the real life stories than you can from the books and those type of things. The books never get you that far. You know, we talk about how you can tell somebody to do something a million times, they have to experience getting it wrong once. You know, you still got to go feel the stove is hot, right?
Oh, yeah.
But to bring it back around
to what you learned.
Yeah, what I learned, mainly not to ash your cigar too early. For those of you who aren't watching the video, that's what I got fussed at about 2 minutes.
About 2 minutes into his cigar, he's like dipping it in the ashtray. Come on, boy. Jeez.
But I learned, and I was gonna take one of your little nuggets, but partially I can't think of which one I like more, and partially because I had another.
Well, we got time if you want to just list all the things I said that were important.
Tell me how smart I am. But I learned how important it is to continue to reflect on your past. I think about my time at Cobra Valley all the time. Think about what I could have done instead of that, opportunity cost, all that different stuff. But when you spend time thinking about opportunity cost, and you get so retrospective on that, like, what could I have done? Oh my gosh, you know, I think I've told this story before. I remember talking with one of my buddies I played rugby with. He's a computer programmer who got into defense contract computer programming. Talked to him. He was pulling in like $100,000 some dollars second year out of college. I thought, crap, what am I doing with that? What am I doing starting my own business? What am I doing with all these different things? Staying negative on it. But there's the perspective flip where you can go find those lessons and continue to apply them to your future. And, you know, I'm not sure if it's worth the money that I didn't make because I'm not a defense programmer or whatever the hell that guy does. It's above my pay grade, as I like to say. But there's plenty of value in those lessons. And so it's important to, when you look back on those things, instead of trying to beat yourself up over them, say, gosh, I could have done this. I could have done that. I should have, you know, done this instead of that. Just keep learning those lessons.
Yeah.
Just keep thinking back to it and think, why did I make that decision? And then think, what were the things that could have led me to the other decision? You know, I talked about my co-founder up there and the differences in our vision.
Yeah.
I don't think I saw that a year ago. I don't think I saw that 2 years ago. I could have told you pretty much the same story, but the lesson wasn't learned.
Yeah.
The lesson that I've learned from it, the more I've thought about it, is seeing that ahead of time, talking about your purpose, talking about your why, reaching that further understanding so that you don't have to make that mistake later on.
No, that's great. And it's, you know, when you reflect on life, sometimes the lessons take longer to soak in. And that's really what it amounts to. You know, I challenge everybody to reflect on each day, reflect on each week, look at those things, look at the successes, celebrate the wins and celebrate the successes. And then what did we learn today? What did you learn listening to us right now? What did you learn today or this week? And capture those things and continue to review them, because you know, if you're not looking at those things in life, man, you'll miss out. You will, because the hardest thing to do is to learn the same lesson over and over and over again. And I'll speak from experience on that. Many times, some of those lessons, but the opportunity is that you can still learn it. It's never too late. I don't care how old you are. I don't care what point in life you are. You can still learn those lessons.
Can I get a little soapboxy?
Go.
So there, if anyone doesn't know, and I have a feeling that based on our demographic, some of these people might know, Old Crow Medicine Show, Wagon Wheel is their big song. If you don't know the story about how they found that song and it became one of the greatest country songs of all time, look it up. The band Midland has a podcast where they dive into country history and stuff. It is a freaking crazy little story about how we got that music. But anyway, Old Crow Medicine Show, one of their songs on the album Remedy, which is an amazing album. Sorry, I bought it the other day, so I'm gonna listen to it on an actual record, to be fair.
All right.
Which makes it a little bit less weird. I'm listening to the same album all the time. But it has a line in the song. The whole song is the song's called "It's Already Mean Enough World." It's already mean enough world. We don't need more out of you. This is one of the main lines in it. But he has this line. They say, I worry that mankind is doomed to continue, or sorry, mankind is doomed to never learn the mistakes of the last 3,000 years. Now, think on that in, big picture philosophy stuff, but more so of, we don't always learn our mistakes when we think we do. Like, oh my gosh, how many people, you and I might even be included in this. It's that honest moment of, I might be wrong, and you have to accept that. Of, you can easily look back at, name any historical event ever over the last 3,000 years and go, oh, well, if we just did this, gosh, Cold War, man, if we would just talk to Russia, if we just communicated, we just were closer culturally, it would have, these type of things. And, I use the Cold War one as the example. That goes back another 100 years to another war, to England and France in the 100 Years' War. It's always the same lesson.
Well, I think the point is, the old adage or the phrase of history repeats. History doesn't repeat, but what happens is we don't learn from history. Therefore, the mistakes seem like history repeating, but history doesn't necessarily repeat, but you have to learn from your history. And
I think that to bring us back around on this very long, what did I learn? To go back to my business example there was a lesson I thought I learned. Shoot, when I left Miami, I thought I learned that lesson. A year later, I thought I learned that lesson. Took this conversation and a lot more honest reflection and talking about it to really learn that lesson. So to bring that all the way back around to a little bit of a challenge for the listeners, whether it's in your personal history, your business, your choices you've made, or go back in history, last 3,000 years. That's the time frame we're talking about, right? Think about those things. The reason I'm going on this little tangent is because when you look at the mistakes in history, it's really easy to oversimplify and not see the nuance, because we're playing Monday morning quarterback. We already knew what was wrong. We already knew who the bad guys were. So it's really easy to go, oh, don't make the bad guy president. Hey, maybe this Adolf Hitler guy probably shouldn't be in charge of Germany. Yeah, real easy to say that now. Real freaking easy for us to look back on that now. But the question is, what were the things that were happening in the buildup that you can actually make change on?
Yeah.
Because it's really easy to play Monday morning quarterback. but it takes a further understanding of the situation, of the nuances of the situation, to take an actual lesson that you can apply, because the lessons won't be as obvious in the future.
Well, that's the critical aspect as we wrap this up, is it's not a lesson learned until you take and apply what happened and change it and don't do it again.
One of my favorite Otisisms.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite Otisisms. I think about that a lot.
All right. Here's a true test. Camden, run us out.
Woo. All right.
He doesn't have his script.
All right, let's go. All right, y'all. Thank you for listening to today's episode of the Cam and Otis Show. We like to thank not our guests, but our sponsors. Like always, Tribe and Purpose. Find your tribe, find your purpose. You can check out recent episodes of the Cam and Otis Show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or Google Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. And you can find our full archive episodes at www.camandotisshow.buzzsprout.com. And there's probably something else.
No.
But thank y'all for listening.
Thank y'all for listening.